Hello, and welcome to Fan/Fiction with Andrew/Zach. I am Andrew Gum.
And I'm Zach Dunsing.
And this week we discuss some truly unique pieces of fanfic.
Literally one of a kind. Or several of a kind. One to several of a kind.
That's fair. We couldn't really search the whole internet. So, we did one mini-ep and realized it was not very mini at all. It was, in fact, a normal-sized episode. So we're going to try to make this one to the point, to touch base on something that we discussed in the first season that we wanted to return to. Zach, what is that?
Okay, so some of you may remember that there's a section in episode 4 where Andrew sort of rattles off a whole section from fanfiction.net where you have one story that's been one bit of fan fiction or crossover fiction that's been written about this thing. Like, as you may recall, one way that you can organize all the stories in fan fiction is by number of stories written about them. And like, again, like Avengers, 63,000, Harry Potter, 50-some thousand, or if not more, but whatever.
A billion. 1 billion Harry Potter stories.
A billion. Yeah. In terms of how many you're going to read in your lifetime, it may as well be a billion.
Yeah. Unless you're my sister or myself, in which case you might get to all of them eventually.
Yeah. So he rattles off a bunch of them, and there was some of them that was like Mr. Holland's Opus and a lot of things that I would consider pretty mainstream in a lot of ways, but don't compel people character-wise to continue the story in the same way that a lot of fan fiction does. So what do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's interesting because the fan fiction community seems to be really about that. They're about a community of people that love these fictional properties so much that they write and read each other's work. And, there's like a lot of sharing that happens in that community. So it's got to be strange to write one piece of fan fiction on a fan fiction site and just no one else is. I mean,
to intentionally zig when everyone's zagging.
Yeah.
But that's second nature for the internet community, for the internet at large, is like, that's what people do, is you just take a thing, a trend, and you do the exact opposite of it to sort of stand out.
Right.
Now, how Mr. Holland's Opus is the exact opposite of the Avengers, I have no idea.
Oh.
So how does a person get to that? Why that character?
Well, for one thing, the Avengers is like really well known. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is really known for not having a lot of good
Richard
music.
Dreyfuss.
And Mr. Holland's Opus has excellent music throughout it. An opus, one might say.
Yeah.
And Richard Dreyfuss.
Uh-huh.
So, in a way, it is the opposite of the Avengers.
Yeah.
So, suck it, nerd. So we're gonna talk about some of those. We actually went in and read a few of those one-offs just to see if we could get some insight into this particular peculiarity of the internet. And
also, sorry, but before we do that, does that mean that, like, okay, let's crunch the numbers here. And if 63,000 people have written fan fiction of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and one person has written fan fiction about Mr. Holland's Opus, is that person 63,000 times bigger of a fan than the rest of those people?
I hope so. I hope that math is correct, because I hope the person who, spoiler alert, one of them is Mr. Holland's Opus fanfiction.
That wasn't an accident.
I hope that they love it so much that they love it more than anybody else loves anything. And if you stick around during the listening of this, you may just find out if they are that much more of a fan. Stay tuned.
To write this second.
This very second. Okay, so let's dive into this.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to end on that one because now I've done all this runway to it, so I gotta end there.
Yeah, that'll be our last one. Okay. So I found a couple, and there wasn't a lot to them, so I was just going to run through those real quick.
Do it.
So one that I found that was interesting was it was just dodgeball fan fiction.
Great.
And it's just about Alan Tudyk, who, well, I mean, we'll get into that in a second.
I'll say it so you don't have to say it.
Okay, thank you.
Zach looks somewhat like Alan Tudyk, but is called Alan Tudyk's doppelganger a lot by other people.
If I have a freshly shaven face, I get Alan Tudyk surprisingly a lot.
Whereas if I have very close cropped hair, I get that girl from Stranger Things a lot.
11?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yours is cooler. I'll just acknowledge that yours is cooler. So it's got Alan Tudyk. He's the pirate.
He's the pirate. He's Steve the pirate. So it's basically, I mean, it's just a story about him being a pirate. There's no connection to Dodgeball or even the modern contemporary time period.
That's great.
He's just a pirate.
He's just actually a pirate. So
well, yeah, and it does all the Yargy matey stuff, like the fake pirate language that he really hammers in.
Yeah.
In Dodgeball. So, I mean, that's it. It's like a page.
That's awesome.
And the other one I read that was like a page that seemed in progress is fan fiction for the movie Mother, Darren Aronofsky's Mother. Darren Aronofsky, fan of the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Darren, for listening.
Thanks as always, Darren.
Which is weird to me because that is just fan fiction of the Old Testament.
Exactly.
So that's,
exactly. So that's
double down.
Right. So, which is interesting that there's a lot of places you could go with fan fiction of the Old Testament because so many other things are based on it. And so, I mean, it's all just an allegory for the Old Testament and, creativity and relationships between men and women and a lot of things. It's a layered movie. Yeah. So there's so much that the person could work with. This person basically is making an adaptation of it. I mean, they're literally just like sort of writing like I said, it's one page. It's the first chapter. It's really just kind of like a one act on the beginning of the movie, not the first act of the movie, but just the beginning of the movie. And it's not bad. I mean, it's not written poorly. It's just like, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not interjecting any of themselves into this. So it's like, what?
So that is interesting. Like, it's the only one of its kind. And we haven't run into that very much of just like, you just wanted to write it out. I guess we had a little bit in the Swanception episode. That
even though had more
it had
oomph to it,
like that had its own external narrative, but it was quoting large sections of a movie.
Yeah, that was largely true. And this was not as bad as this is not the same as the like just transcribing sort of what happens in the movie. This was written in sort of flowery prose. Mm-hmm. I mean, it calls itself a novelization of the movie. So we'll see if they continue with that.
Yeah. Well,
those were the two that there. I didn't read it, but I did come across one that is just about the two characters that Patrick Swayze fires at the beginning of Roadhouse. Like what happens to them after they get fired from the bar. So
that's very silly. That is,
I mean, that's why I didn't read it. Like,
yeah,
can't imagine sort of it was going anywhere.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern moment right there.
Oh yeah,
you follow two other.
Yeah, maybe I should look into it actually.
Yeah, see if we get another group of bumbling Randalls.
Maybe those Randalls are the reason why that guy got his throat ripped out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he chose to go into a very dangerous roadhouse.
Yeah.
With some
Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, I mean. We should all have learned by now not to mess with Swayze unless you're crazy. I got some chew. Let me tell you about the Stepford Wives.
Okay.
Seen from an interesting vantage point. Guess the vantage point.
From one of their children?
Yes, very good. So the Stepford Wives from the perspective of the Stepford teens.
Interesting.
So they've all got their young kids that have not been fully Stepfordized yet. And so they're just
brainwashed yet.
Yeah, they're kind of just talking about how weird this community is that they're living in, that their parents are like never around, so they can kind of do whatever they want. Their parents are always like doing these really neat and tidy things. They don't feel any real connection to their parents. They just want to like hook up with each other and do drugs, but there's no drugs because the area is too wholesome. The Stepford Wives, if you have not seen the movie, is all the adults are robots.
Yeah. Nicole Kidman?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's based on an older film, I think.
It is, but I don't know anything about it.
Anyway, so that was interesting because the kids don't know that their parents are robots, and I actually thought that was like, that's a cool vantage point to follow into the Stepford Wives, because
what was happening to the real wives?
I think they're like put on into stasis or something. And then they're being replaced by these perfect robot women.
Is this an invasion scenario?
I don't think so. I think it's like a company that is selling the perfect woman. Oh. And they can look just like your wife, but better.
And more obedient, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
it's
gross.
Like it was like but it's a feminist film, talking about how that's terrifying, the expectations that you're putting on to women. You just want them to be these robots.
Right.
And turns out that's not a good thing to want a Stepford wife. So it's dope. It was
a trailblazing feminist film, The Stepford Wives.
The Stepford Wives, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Bell Hooks, if you're listening, you should really check out The Stepford Wives. Bell Hooks, just a civil rights activist, feminist writer. Pretty cool. If that's not correct, please edit that out. I will sound so not woke.
Well, if I had to edit out all the not woke things we said, we wouldn't have much of a podcast left.
That's true. Luckily, we are
trying
in very woke communities of people that are making us better.
That are smarter than we are.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Okay. The next one is a weird one, especially because it involves Kevin Spacey. And
Great.
That's weird now. It's K-Pax.
I downloaded that one and I read a little bit of it, but please continue.
Way. It's a weird take on K-Pax. So to get you up to speed on K-Pax, K-Pax is a film about a mental patient played by
disgraced actor Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. Kevin, you really did that one to yourself. And other people.
And unfortunately other people,
yeah. So it follows him. He's a mental patient, but he says that he is an alien from the planet K-Pax. And he's just insightful and strange enough that even though they know he's a mental patient who just has a severe history of trauma, the person who's meeting with him, I think it's like a social worker or something, starts to maybe wonder.
It is played by...
I don't remember. But he, at the end, he says he's going back to Planet K-Pax, and he gets himself into his room, so they go and throw open the door, and the room is empty. And they're like, oh my God, it's true. He went back to Planet K-Pax. Then you look over the side of the bed and you see that this man has just gone into a catatonic state and is not responding anymore, which is how he had been before he had this whole alien from the planet K-Pax thing going on. So it seems like
was it William Hurt?
Maybe?
No, I don't know.
I don't know. But I do remember that it was a fun movie.
Yeah. I only saw it the one time.
And yeah, I saw it when I was a kid. And the end it's kind of ambiguous. Maybe he was an alien that was inhabiting this body. Maybe it was just all a delusion and he was only conscious for a while, but it was kind of a feel-good movie. It was like teaching them all lessons about
because Kevin Spacey's character had been a person who had been traumatized. Right. And his family was murdered. Yeah. And he sort of disappeared from the community he was in and then showed up in this mental institution, catatonic.
Right.
And then was starting to have this life come back into him that was this entity, real or otherwise, named Prote?
Yes.
Prote?
Yeah. And he was from
K-Pax. Continue.
So this goes in a very different direction.
Okay.
It follows a young medical student.
Because this is just post K-Pax entity leaving his body or exercising his body.
Yes, exactly.
Being exercised from his body.
The young student, Valerie, is assigned her first patient, this guy, Robert, who was formerly Prote, the alien. And
formerly an accredited actor.
Yeah. Formerly just a real powerhouse of a performer. Really loved Kevin Spacey for a very long time. And, there are logical consequences to being the worst.
Yeah.
And it's, it even claims our heroes, guys. It even claims our heroes because,
That's why I don't have heroes.
Yeah, because everyone's the worst.
People say don't meet your heroes. I say don't ever have them.
Don't even, make yourself into a hero.
Yeah.
Then you'll just disappoint somebody else down the road.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she has this fully catatonic patient, starts reading to him from the Bible, taking care of him, singing to him, falling deeply in love with this fully catatonic person. Then, one day, while she's singing to him, he wakes up and sings along with her, and they share a warm kiss instantly because he had fallen in love with her too. So it's sort of like a Sleeping Beauty in reverse, and just as weird as Sleeping Beauty in that he was
very rapey.
Yeah, that he was just an unconscious man.
There's not a lot of consent involved.
No. I mean, he did wake up and kiss her, but it was just, you were very much falling in love with a catatonic body that had no agency, which is a little messed up. However, also sweet. And clearly wanted to have a happy ending for Kevin Spacey's character. So at least you can have it in that film.
Are we to the main event?
Yeah, last but not least. I know you all
our magnum opus?
Yes, our Holland's magnum opus. That's exactly right.
Our Dreyfus opus.
So the question posed very prophetically by Zach at the beginning is, if you are one person who has written a piece of fan fiction instead of one of 7,500, or out of 65,000, are you 65,000 times more of a fan? And at least in this case, the answer is yes. This person wrote their opus about Rowena going on to start a career on Broadway. Now,
okay, break down Mr. Holland's opus for us.
Okay, Mr. Holland's opus is a man who's a musician who's trying to write his opus, this piece of music that is going to, and he's working on it and been working on it for a very, very long time. His son is born and is born deaf, and so he and his wife have to get kind of regular jobs, or his wife has to stay home with the kid. So he has to just get a job as like a high school music teacher, and
everyone's worst nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. Like working with high school students, which for some people sounds bad. For me, it's great. Love you guys. I hope you never find this podcast because I say so many swears. But anyway, so in the midst of this, he's not happy. He doesn't want to be a high school music teacher. He wants to be a musician, like a professional musician, and he feels like his dreams have been stymied. And along the way, he meets this high school student who's a very, very good singer named Rowena, and makes her the lead in a musical, and in the end they come back and they sing his opus for him after he's lived his life, and he sees all the lives that he had mattered to and touched being a teacher, and he realizes that his life that he was afraid had been wasted had actually been a beautiful
Does he die?
Life. I think he's dying.
Oh yeah. End. Well, they wanted to call it Mr. Holland's cancer, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same, oomph.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they follow Rowena, who goes on to start a career on Broadway. And guess how many words are in this story?
63,000?
No. 75,000 words. I want to say it was 750,000 words, but that's way too long. I think it's 75,000.
It's 70. That would be incredibly long.
Yeah, that's like a book series,
yes.
Right? So,
it's like a book. Yeah.
Just following this character, which if you read through it, and I didn't read the whole thing, I'm going to be honest, but I skimmed through and read portions of it, and it's really just about like this young woman going on to start a career on Broadway, kind of meeting slimy producer people that are trying to help her, but then kind of backstab her along the way as she's trying to make it on Broadway, which is just like a good story of a young woman trying to be successful.
Also another one of those ones that could exist completely independently of Mr. Holland's opus.
Absolutely. Which is why they are actually 65,000 times more of a fan. Because they love Rowena so much that they wanted it to be her story.
They've also created something for that story that is expanding that universe and creating something new, rather than like the problem with fan fiction is just where you're like rehashing stuff that happens in your favorite thing.
It's like that making it happen a little differently, or just kind of taking characters from it and not.
It's the equivalent of when they used to re-release the same action figures, but they would just give them different paint jobs.
Yeah.
Like the same G.I. Joe, like the same, what's his name? Not Snake Eyes.
Cobra?
Well, no.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Cobra.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, the ninja. Yeah, they would just re-release him with a different paint job.
Yeah.
And call him a different figure. And you're like, oh, it's a fucking ninja.
Yeah.
It's a fucking ninja, you guys.
He's just now tan.
Yeah.
That's all.
He's just a naked man now with a Beretta.
That would be very scary if that was coming towards you with Ninja Stars, though. A naked man with a Beretta. Or a beret? Does he have a beret? You said Beretta.
I said Beretta.
If you had a Beretta and a beret and a baguette. A baguette with burrata cheese on it, that would be
very Baroque.
Nailed it. All right. So that's all of them for the one-offs. They were
one-offs.
They were all one-offs, and I think that they all did things slightly differently, which makes sense because these are people that are swimming against the stream.
Yeah, they're trying something different.
Yeah, and good for you guys. Mm-hmm. Keep doing it. I still want a Toe Jam and Earl fanfic. Mm. I want a Bible and My Girl crossover. Mm-hmm. Oh, the My Girl one was empty. That's the thing I wanted to tell you.
You tried to find. You looked at the My Girl one. I wanted to see
if they had one from the perspective of the bees, but I looked in the My Girl file and it was empty. So there is actually no My Girl fan fiction. Yeah. Though if you find one from the perspective of the bees or write one, please tell us. I really want to read that.
What would be? We should try this too because you're already doing it, and this is something that we should start doing when we start doing the interviews, is wrap up the show and ask them what's the number one fanfic you would want to see.
Oh, that's
not
good.
Write, but read.
Yeah, one that exactly, that you wished existed so you could talk about it. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stick with my answer of My Girl and the Bees for now until I think of something better. Do you have one that you want to exist?
Crossover between Back to the Future 2 and A Clockwork Orange. Where they both exist in the same dystopian near future.
Oh, I like that a lot.
As if Back to the Future 2, that version is just what it's like in not Sunnyvale, where it's like in Twin Pines or whatever.
Oh, I like the idea that Biff's son is actually the
Alex.
Yeah, the main Droog, the Malcolm McDowell's
Alex
character, Alex. And so Marty's son is getting mixed up with those guys and getting pulled in. And so then when he goes back to the past to try to set things right, you've got future Alex going back with him and just raising hell. That would be great.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. You could call it a Clock Tower Orange. Yes! Proud of that. Okay.
Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Zach. Good evening. Hello there, Andrew here. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to hear more of this stuff, go to fanfiction.show or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can contact us at xandrew@fanfiction.show. Our Twitter and Instagram are @fanfictionshow as well. So the things we read today, if you want to read them yourself, are Treachery and Mutiny on the High Seas by Not Marge, Automatons by Kelly Thompson, Walks in the Garden, Dory's Blue, spelled DORYSBLU, and Someone to Watch Over Me, Rowena's Story, by Smoshin. There were some corrections that we needed to make. For one thing, when I was trying to find the name of the K-Pax fanfiction, I found a bunch of other K-Pax fanfiction, which definitely means it is not one of a kind. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that one my bad. Also, Twin Pines is the name of the mall in Back to the Future, not the town. And as everyone knows, the name got changed to Lone Pine Mall because Marty crashed into one of the pine trees in 1955. Sorry, that was an unforgivable error. Also, Snake Eyes is the name of the Ninja G.I. Joe, not Ninja. And this is one that Zach wanted to have pointed out, which is, very self-effacing of him, but it's Jeff Bridges in K-Pax. So he remembered that there was the alien named Prot that had occupied Kevin Spacey's brain, but didn't remember that, Jeff Bridges, an American treasure, was in the film, though in his defense, neither did I. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.